money. So today we're looking at overcoming financial failures. One of the things that can put you down and put you down for long is when you try something and you fail. And we know that some of us are unable to venture into business or even change careers simply because we fear to fail financially. When I talk about failing financially, are there times you've been unable to provide for your family if possibly you're the breadwinner, or there are times you've not been able to pay your debts that you like to pay, or they're just those financial obligations that you're not able to keep up to? How do you overcome that? Joining me is a life coach, and that is Leonard Asher, and he's from Empowerment Resource Technology. Good to have you, and good morning.
Thanks so much. Good
Thank
morning,
you for
Mike.
joining
Thanks
us
so much.
once again. Now, am I correct in saying that finances, especially when we fail, can be a major part of us feeling unable to continue with life?
In fact, because if you look at life generally, the driver is money. You've got to eat.
In fact, according to the Bible, it says that money answers all things.
You've got to eat. You've got to have mobility from A to B. You've got to have shelter on your head. You need to take care of the kids. So that aspect of life plays a tremendous role or impact on how you are going to get moving in your life.
Okay. So financial failure is a major part of all of us by virtue of the fact what you've mentioned. It's one of those things that we need basically just to get on.
In fact, when you come to think about it, finance plays such a key role in our life that's why our parents were willing to spend all the money and take us to school. Not because they wanted to be an executive. They wanted you to have to be able to make a living and be on your own.
And a decent living for that matter.
Absolutely.
Now, last week we talked about how we relate to money. And one of the reasons why we probably fail financially is how we relate. But we dealt with that and we said that we need to have a new perception of financial intelligence where we are able to relate with money properly. Now, what are some of the causes that would make us fail financially speaking?
Now, well, I think because failure is a very integral part of life, we need to appreciate that all of us at some point, we're going to fail. Or we have failed.
Whether we like it or we don't.
Or we fail. So that's something we need to appreciate. And the funny thing about failure is that it leaves a very bitter taste in our lives. And our response mechanism differs from person to person. Some people, fortunately, they know how to bounce back. They have resilience, tenacity, and fortitude. They can bounce back. Other people need to be counseled to be helped to get back. But the key thing about the whole thing about failure, you cannot divorce your person, your character. And when I talk about character, I'm not talking about morality. I'm talking about your constitution, your makeup, your DNA, how you're wired. Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, life never prepares us for failure. And that's why we take failure so personally, so badly, and we make a bad situation worse. But like many failures, financial failure is unique, stands apart, because being the foundation that drives everything we want to do. Because if you look at our problems, by the way, think realistically, most of us, not all of us, but most of us, there's a financial element to it. Okay, so the moment you find yourself in a scenario whereby you are financially unable to meet your obligations, however mundane they are, however basic they are, you're in a very, very, very challenging situation.
Okay, you've talked about DNA and our genetic makeup, and I know you have your brain here today, which maybe you'll explain
at some point,
but at some point. But help me understand, are there some of us who are cut out to fail because of how we respond?
Wow. That's a very interesting question, Mike. From time immemorial, if you look at history has been punctuated by one common factor: failure. You can go to the Bible, biblically speaking. God created the universe and said all was good. After we said all was good, what happened next? Setback. Adam or Eve broke the rules, and a series of events unfolded that we can call failure. So I think failure is a default mechanism. Anytime you are on a journey to success or to progress, you must contend mentally that you're going to meet some obstacles. So I don't think there's anybody wired for failure at the end of the day. It is a natural part of life. What normally happens that there's anathema, there's a stigma around failure. Even those of us who fail don't want to admit we have failed. But I'll tell you that every level of progress, whether financial, academic, or marital, whatever you want to talk about it, people always tell you that for them to get where they've gotten, they had to overcome barriers, obstacles, setbacks, or failure for that matter. But failure, because it brings a lot of shame. And you know that one of the most mortifying emotion is the emotion of shame. We hate shame. It's debilitating. It makes you feel small. And failure, unfortunately, is synonymous with shame. So many people are unwilling to deal with that shame that failure brings along the way. And they cave in. And in the caving in, they make the bad situation worse.
Okay. You've talked about people who have a resilience, an ability to bounce back. They have that fortitude. They have literally they're like a rubber band. You pull them and stretch them as far as they can, they'll still bounce back. What is it that causes one to have that? Whereas others, failure literally takes them to the other end where now they do not want to try anything.
Yeah. Interestingly, that our makeup, we are very unique. We are wired by God is very, very unique. But also, the other thing to consider is that some people, the fortitude, the tenacity, and the endurance and the resilience that some people tend to manifest, there are two elements to it, and it's subject to debate. There are those people who are cut out for it. They thrive on commodity. You can never put them down. It does not matter how low you put them. It doesn't matter how much pressure you bring to bear upon them. They have that ability to bounce back and be able to move forward. Actually, it is becoming a very key element in emotional intelligence, in leadership. The capacity and the ability to bounce back, to deal with, because now, like at the end of the day, nobody prepares you for problems, but they are going to come. Okay? But we've seen people who navigate and respond to problems very, very well. However, others, like some of us, we are taught, we learn circumstances. And unfortunately, that tenacity and fortitude is something you've got to earn. You cannot have it without going through corresponding pressure.
It's more like a muscle which you have to grow through exercise.
You put pretty well.
Okay.
It's like going to a gym. You'll never know how strong your muscles are until you begin lifting weights. So you find that the pressure you exert your body, your muscles too, is the same pressure that gives you the resilience and the ability and endurance to be able to lift those weights. In the same thing, there are some people who are very resilient today. Very resilient, very strong, very dynamic. They have fortitude and tenacity. But if you do a postmortem of who they are men and women that have overcome adversity. In other words, the problems they've gone through have made them stronger, have made them to endure, and they are the people now who make failure, who respond to failure in a very positive way. Others learn, okay, either through coaching, personal help, or counseling. But unfortunately, there are also a lot of people that when they are faced with this kind of challenges, they never bounce back. Causing point is that sometimes you find that you can have a very easy life sometimes just by circumstantially, and you have never had a bit of test of failure. So then you develop some form of hubris, which is called arrogance, which comes from success. You know, there's some success you get, and you just feel like you're the one making things happen. So then you find that you've not had an opportunity, in quotes, to find resistance. And your life has been going on normally, without any challenge. The day, God forbid, you hit a storm, most of those people just split apart. They just fall apart completely because they have no reference of dealing with setbacks.
Going back. All right, let's now tackle the nitty-gritties. How does one begin, and where does one begin to actually overcome that failure, financial failure? When maybe, let's just take an example of somebody who's tried a business and it didn't work. And anyway, most businesses initially go through a period where it's very rough, then they have to come up. How does one begin to overcome financial failure?
Before we get there, let's look at the background a little bit. Failure comes in many forms and facets. Some of it, business failure, because you made a bad decision, or you get conned, or you bought the wrong product, or maybe you're going through a situational problem like a divorce. That can put your finances in a spin, or you've lost a job, you're in a spin, or the market has just receded, the market has just collapsed, like things happen.
Like when the quails were there, you know, suddenly everybody has quails and the market collapses.
Or you had all your ducks in a row, and the deals are okay, you've done everything right, and your money is in one of these banks. And you wake up one morning, everything has been wiped out. So there are so many circumstances that can create this kind of scenario. Some of them are deliberately, you could say you are responsible, some are not responsible. But the fortunate thing about the whole process is the response mechanism is the same regardless of what caused your problem.
Okay.
So experts.
So whichever failure you're talking about,
absolutely,
the response is the same.
It's the same.
Okay.
The first step, which is the hardest, is easier to speak about but hard to practice. Accepting
that
you're in a crisis. That ability that you're in a crisis. The funny thing about our mind, how our mind works, or our brain for that matter, is very complicated. That the messages we give it have a way of helping it respond to an issue. We have, if you look at this very, very beautiful
brain of yours.
I love this one.
Is this the real size of a brain, by the way?
Apparently, yes. These are life size, actually.
Okay, that's a life size.
Absolutely.
And regardless of how intelligent, how unintelligent you are, that's the size of the brain.
The experts tell
that's
us
the amazing thing.
1.2 kilos for moron, genius, idiot, or imbecile. It doesn't matter.
All of them are the same size. All right.
And also even the structure, unfortunately, the structure is the same. But anyway, you have a number of lobes. But I want to talk about the executive lobe, which is the neocortex at the front here. This is the most intelligent part of the brain where you make decisions and think. So at the end of the day, they say the brain has a brain of its own. They say, that's why they say, think about what you're thinking about. Because the brain has things on its own.
Almost has its own mechanism of working.
So at the end of the day, if you don't give the brain commands, it goes in its natural default, which whereby it works with the information it has all along. But you see now, acceptance is an intellectual process where you analytically and consciously realize that I'm having a crisis.
Okay.
Okay.
Which is why I guess even when they're dealing with alcoholism or addiction in that matter, the first thing they say is that the person needs to accept and realize there is a problem.
Because you have a conscious and unconscious faculty. The unconscious faculty is that very sophisticated subterranean area of the brain where many things happen without your knowledge. Like, you are breathing, you are seeing, you are hearing.
Without thinking
without even thinking about it. It's happening at a very high level. And many things happen in that process now. But those are called the consciousness, which is called the awareness now, whereby the information must get away from the subterranean area, which is unconscious, to the consciousness. So in this case, you can be feeling the emotions of loss, of failure, of setback, of an anxiety. But they're all just emotions. They're not clear. But then now you need to make them conscious, to be aware, which are called emotional intelligence. You're trying to put logic in emotions, because emotions are not logical. You're trying to be aware. I want to be alert. I'm aware. So, and it's a very, very high level process whereby someone is able to bring it to himself, to be aware that, you know something, I'm in a crisis. You've heard about things called denial, whereby you've refused to accept there's a crisis. Everybody's seeing a problem apart from you. So the first step, which is the hardest, is to realize that right now I'm in a crisis. Because that has its own impact. Because what normally happens, they say the brain, we are wired for survival. That's why you find that nobody will teach you to run away from danger. If you're in trouble, if you see, for example, like we are here and a reptile comes in, there will be no thinking. You just respond subconsciously and take off. Yes. Because your system is so sensitive and it wants to self-preserve.
So it'll sense danger.
Danger, and you take off. You get my point? But now, that survival instinct is just an instinct. It needs to be graduated to whereby now you're consciously now aware that right now I'm in a situation that I need to transform. Now the problem is the instinct for survival is not logical. So the things you do are not things you can rationalize. Are you together? Maybe you just take off and you go through, you run through barriers anyhow and find yourself surviving. But now when it comes to dealing with failure, you can't run by instinct. You now have to put in some logic and you appreciate, I'm having a crisis, and first of all, you accept it. Once you accept it, what normally happens is that the mind has there's a principle called neuroplasticity. The capacity of the mind to adjust situations. That's why we survive, actually. Because if you never adjusted, you would die. You have to adjust. You've seen people where you see they're going through so much pressure and you wonder how are they coping. Naturally, you cannot reconcile, but they are coping because they have adjusted. Their system has adjusted to those conditions that they are able to function in spite of the stress they are going through. Okay? So what normally happens, the moment you consciously accept that I'm having a crisis on my part, your system begins to adjust. to that
and
situation.
do whatever is necessary
Exactly.
to deal with whatever.
Exactly.
is
But you see what
at hand.
normally happens? Accepting is so hard that most of us go into denial. Now, when you go in denial, you're postponing the problem. Because now you will come up with a solution. You will come up with a way out. You are now absolutely in denial, and you end up getting, let's speak for example, let's say a financial crisis. You're in a financial mess. You refuse to accept you're in a financial mess. So you begin living the way you've been living before. You get my point? Because
You still want to
you have not
maintain
accepted
the same lifestyle.
And don't forget, we have an image to protect. There's a way I want you to look at me. There's a car I drive. There's where I live. There's where I dine. You know, those peer pressure,
Aesthetics.
exactly, aesthetics around us. It's so, stepping down is very hard for many people at the end of the day. So you find that you refuse to accept that you're having a crisis, that the lifestyle you are living at the moment is not sustainable with the current circumstances. So because you want to maintain face, what do you think normally happens? You must find alternative means to support that lifestyle, which are not now conventional income, but maybe debt. So now you find that you run from crisis to crisis. So what was bad becomes what? Worse. Because the problem, not because there's no problem. The problem is you have refused to accept that you are in
The
a
current
crisis.
situation where
Absolutely.
things are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, acceptance, some people naturally have that ability to accept. Others have to be cancelled. People to help you see that you're actually in a grave danger.
Okay. We need to speed up because of time.
Correct.
And I want us to now get to the point where what are the actions that I need to take for me, first of all, to accept, to adjust, and get myself out of the crisis? Because at the end of the day, I really want to get myself out of the financial mess or the failure.
Correct. Once you accept, you go to the next step now of taking the personal inventory. You take stock of what is happening around you. Remember, this is now intellectual, not emotional. You begin now, because you've accepted, first of all, because acceptance is the first step to solving a problem. It's like when you are sick. You don't accept you are sick, you want to see a doctor. But once you feel, sijisikii poa, that acceptance now initiates a series of actions you take. You go to see a doctor, you go to hospital, you look for help. It's the same thing. Once I accept that I'm having a crisis on my head, I begin taking inventory. What do I need to do to normalize, to mitigate, or to ameliorate the situation? So that taking personal inventory is where now, again, another very powerful component comes in. Honesty.
With yourself.
And accepting reality, to be honest that now I'm having an issue with me here, based on my resources here, what can be done? People who are financially very intelligent, this is when even they relocate. You find somebody relocating from one area of town to another area of town. Not because they are unable, but they've realized that for me to continue solving this problem, I have to move away from where I am. People change their lifestyle. Now, these are people who are now conscious. And you see, the problem is that the environment around us doesn't make it easier. That's when you become a subject of talk. People begin to, can you believe it? So and so now it's like ABC. So you need to go back to your own internal resource and defend yourself from these onslaughts. Because even people around you don't make it easy, especially close friends. They begin making you a subject of discussion. They don't make it easier for you in the first place. But because you have internally accepted internally, you are no longer moved by what people think about you. You are internally secure inside. And you begin now making decisions. You are looking at your inventory to see what can you work with to help you begin either mitigating or minimizing the damage you're going through. Okay? Now, once that has been done, then you set your objective now. What do I want to achieve now?
Way forward.
Way forward. Now, way forward also differs from, remember, if you look at the whole process of when you go to hospital, what does the doctor do? They examine, diagnose, and then prescribe. In that order. They can never mismatch the order. So now, because you have examined, which you're accepting, then you have diagnosed, you've done your inventory analysis, you are now going to prescribe.
Now, this is solutions.
These are solutions now. Solutions,
okay.
yeah. Depending on your objective. Now, this is when if you had very high goals, you begin lowering them down. Because they're no longer sustainable depending on the circumstances you are facing. You find that if you have some long-term goals which are bigger, you scale them down. You say, now, this one can't take off, this can't take off, let's do what we can deal with. First and foremost is survival. You want to ensure there's food on the table and the shelter.
Okay. So now, once somebody has gone through that series of events in your own personal audit, if I can call it that, where now you've accepted, you have agreed, and you've adjusted, what's the next thing that one needs to do in terms of now projecting, especially now, because we're looking at it from a business perspective, but even career-wise, there are people who possibly have not accepted that they are failing in their careers. How does one accept that, and what do you do after that?
Now, you see the problem now, again, we go back to where we started from. You cannot solve a problem you have not accepted as a problem. You're going to go back to what we started from. You have not accepted you're having a crisis. But you see, the moment you accept, acceptance, fortunately, sets in place a series of actions that allows you to begin embarking on a journey of trying to mitigate, minimize, or eliminate the challenge you are going through. Okay? So at that level, that's why we talk about support networks. Those people who are like, there's a support networks where people can go and get helped. But on condition, the help you're going to get corresponds with your willingness to be helped at the end of the day. All right? And then also, you reconfigure, you begin reconfiguring your scenario. Like, for example, like, you see, the challenge is that stepping down becomes a problem. If you look at people who inspire us through books, movies, that have been able to re-engineer themselves from a failure, from a crisis, to getting back on the road, they are willing to go back and start from square one. You begin from the fundamentals. Okay? Some people who had cars stopped even, forget about cars and
get into public
means. And you lose nothing, by the way. But you're retreating, you're consolidating yourself again. Some people even take even a lower job that's way beyond their ability, so that they can be able to get the energy back to get working. Some people, again, begin new businesses, humble businesses, very simple. Now, the difference in life, you find that now, those people who are willing to adjust very quickly are the same people who are able to bounce back and be able to move ahead.
All right, I would like to wind up now because of time. What's the rule of thumb to overcome failure? If you're to do it in one sentence, and anybody who you meet, what would it be that you would say or prescribe that this is the way to get out of failure, or this is the way to accept and move on?
All I would say is that if you don't change direction, you wind up where you're heading.
It can be forward movement, but in the wrong direction.
At the end of the day, you see, if you're in a wrong direction, change of car won't help. Even if you get a newer car, it won't help. Even if you drive faster, the challenge is you need to be very honest. The direction I'm headed, is it appropriate or not? Okay? And you see, that realization is purely internal. It's you to realize I'm on a wrong direction. If you're not in the wrong direction, then that's a challenge. The moment you're able to appreciate the direction you're on, you begin making a turnaround. The fortunate thing is that the moment we turn around, it's not about how fast you're moving or where you are at the moment. But the key thing is to ensure that the direction now you're changing is now helping you to slowly and gradually begin getting on a path of recovery. So the first thing about all I could say in summary about the whole process is that failure is one thing that all of us will have met at some point, or we have met, or will meet. The challenge is not so much about what has happened, where it has happened, when it has happened. It is how we respond to that situation.
All right. I think that'll be a good point to wind it up. Thank you very much, Asha.
Thank you so much.
And that's Leonard Asha, who's a life coach with Empowerment Resource Technologies, talking to us about overcoming financial failure. Thank you very much for joining us on Morning Express. Before we wind up, just to give you the poll tally that we have so far, the question we were interacting with you with is, as Mombasa County improved under the leadership of Ali Hassan Joho? 51% of you say yes, 49% of you say no, it has not. And just to read some of the comments that have come through, there are some who have said yes, Ali Hassan Joho is the man to look at come the future as a president. The issue here is not working, where it is how he's working. There are also questions that were coming in galore. Hopefully we covered those, but I can't go through all of them. But let me take this opportunity to thank you all for joining us this morning on Morning Express. Well, this is where we're going to wind up and wish you all a fantastic and a wonderful day. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing right here on KTN News. As from me and the team that ensures Morning Express comes to you every morning, we say goodbye and see you tomorrow morning bright and early. God bless.